This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Hola music lovers, it's Robonzo. This episode of the Unstarving Musicians Podcast features a conversation with Lee Oskar. Where do I begin? Born in Denmark, Lee found his way to New York at age 18 to pursue a career in music. He eventually found his way to LA, where people took quick notice of his unique skills as a harmonica player. This is about the time he met one Eric Burdon, who went on to be his bandmate in a little funk rock fusion ensemble called War. The ensuing string of hits included Spill the Wine, The World is a Ghetto, The Cisco Kid, Why Can't We Be Friends, and Lowrider, among others. He also has an impressive body of solo recordings. In the late 70s, Lee began working on what would eventually become Lee Oskar Harmonicas, all out of frustration with the subpar harps available to him at the time. This was a problem because Lee has always seen the harp as not just an instrument, but as his voice. What better reason to create an internationally successful designer and manufacturer of world-class harmonicas? Our conversation is wide-ranging, traversing mutual acquaintances, early influences, war, gigs at Ronnie Scott's famed jazz club, meeting and jamming with Jimi Hendrix, business, following your heart, having belief in yourself, persistence, hype, and much, much more. I recommend that you grab a pen and notepad because you're about to hear a voice of true wisdom and unique experience. Please enjoy my conversation with the gifted Lee Oskar. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thank you for having me.
Of course. So I had the good fortune of speaking with a friend of yours, John Wolf, who organizes the Ghetto Jazz and Blues Festival, and he was... He was so kind as to connect me with you and your people, as it were. So, yeah, super nice to chat with you. Can you tell me a little bit quickly about your history with John and the Jazz and Blues Festival in Boquete, Panama?
Yeah, John Wolf is the promoter for... It's a small but really incredible hang. You know, it's not like thousands of people. I'm sure they'll get that. But he's building out this festival each year, and he brings great musicians. And a lot of times it's not even, the superstar and all that. It can be... studio musician or different players that are just the best of the best, playing maybe for different people around the world. But anyhow, he puts these different things together. Part of it is jams, and part of it is, different artists play their own stuff. And it's in this little place in Panama that I've been there 2 times. I'm getting ready to do the 3rd time.
Excellent.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's like, and in Panama, there's unfortunately, a lot of poor people among a lot of people that retire that have money or, and bring it and move to Panama, maybe for better life. They put their money so they can buy houses and they got medical plans or whatever. There's all kinds of incentives Panama offers for people from Canada and from the United States. But it's got this mixed bag of poor and well-off people. And, just real quick, there's a friend of ours who formed a Rotary Club, and they moved to Panama, and they saw that there was a need for wheelchairs, and they brought into Panama a few hundred wheelchairs. And you should have seen one of the images I saw is this parent was carrying his son on his back for 20-some years.
Wow.
To mobile around, and the smile on this person's face, not just the parent, but the 20-year-old son in a wheelchair and being able to get around. I mean, it's just some of the simplest things are just profoundly amazing and cherished by needs that some of these people need. And John is just trying to do these festivals and embrace a lot of local stuff as well, and forming a school for teaching music, because there's so much musicality. People love music, and they're starving. And so he's doing a lot of nice things besides just calling him a music promoter.
How did you guys originally meet?
I was introduced to him. He reached out, and I think it was to Jay Seelman, I believe, who was the president of the Blues Foundation, who started the Memphis Museum and all that in Memphis, you know. I believe that was my connection first.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus some people he hired to run it who are friends of mine, and they reached out as well. So I guess, you know, it's a small world, you know.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear you're going to be back. I hope to be there this year. I actually met John before I knew who he was. My wife and I, we live near Coronado in Panama and happened to see a touring artist with another local guy, and John Wolfe was there because these two gentlemen had played at the Jazz and Blues Fest. So anyway, that's kind of how I got connected with him, and then ultimately with you. Nice guy, though. Really like him a lot.
Yeah, he's very ambitious, and that's good.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening to this, John Wolfe is featured in a prior episode. I don't have that number handy, but I will put it in the show notes for you. So one of the things I noticed in doing a little bit of homework about you were your early music influences, which I hoped you could talk about, but at least from what I read, Ray Charles was among them.
Well, Ray Charles, I think by far was a big influence. You know, when I play harmonica, I don't think it as an instrument. I think it as a tool, and it's my voice. I mean, it's the way he sings and phrases was a big influence on me. And when I play harmonica, I think of myself as a singer, as a crooner, or whatever, with the harmonica.
Ah, that's cool. By chance I guess Ray Charles, was that something that you discovered among your circle as a kid, or who introduced you to him and some of the others that influenced you early on?
Very early on, I don't know who was specifically influenced. Radio in Denmark, where I'm from, was not categories of music. You could hear Björling singing an opera, and then next thing it could be Perry Como singing Melody d'Amour, and then it could be Ray Charles or Louis Armstrong. It was classical, jazz, everything. It was just music. Right. And that's the only source I would ever hear if I ever heard music other than me just being lost in my own harmonica since I was 6 years old and making up symphonies in my head or whatever. But I got my first Ray Charles album many years later after I came to the United States to try and make it in the music business. When I came to LA, I met Eric, before I met Eric Burdon, I should say. At the time I met Hugh Masekela and that. And then I got this album called Crying Time. And then when I finally got a turntable, I used turntable on that. When I got with Eric Burdon and War, I was able to buy a turntable. I was totally blown away when I heard Crying Time album. And I think that really, really hit a spot, you know, with me.
Well, I have a soft spot for Ray Charles, too. My mom, when I was a kid, my mom had a couple of his albums, and so it was at home being played a lot along with some other things. So it caught my eye that you were influenced by him. So what was your, if I may, real quick, before we come back to when you came to the States, what was your childhood like in Denmark?
It was, I wanted to be both an entomologist, which is study insects, and I wanted to be an artist, and I was in love with the idea of being a composer and a musician. So I was in my world, but academically I was a terrible student and probably a very frustrated kid. That puts it in a nutshell.
That's great. So you moved to, I guess you came to the States at around 18 to New York initially and then made your way to LA, is that right?
Yeah. When I got to LA, that's when things really started opening up for me. That's when I met Eric Burdon at a jam sessions that would be at a club called The Experience, and Eric would come in there every night, and I would be allowed for free in, and we'd be on stage jamming with a band called the Blues Image, who came out of Florida too, and they started hanging out at The Experience, that club. And just things started to fall in place. I mean, I was on the streets pretty much, you know, I mean, not out of choice, not out of glamour, but I didn't have a day job, and I don't think I ever have experienced really what a day job is. And I was just on the Jones of wanted to get a record deal and wanted to make it in the music business, and that was my whole passion. And you know, I mean, I was very ambitious, and whatever it took, I would, you know, knock on doors. I would keep going and never accept. If somebody said no, I figured they haven't heard me yet. They can't say no unless they really hear me. So nothing could keep me down. I just was very inspired to prove to myself and everybody that I am what I really love doing. And so that's how I kept going.
Looking back on it, does it seem like when you reflect on those times, does it seem like it took forever, it was really hard to get there, or did it, in retrospect, does it feel like it happened, kind of quickly all of a sudden from the time you met Eric?
Reality checks, and a very important point is that to feed into your question is that there's no rules in how to make it, other than you got to believe and you got to be very ambitious. It's not just talent. There's a saying, you can have 99% talent and 1% desire, you ain't gonna make it. You can have 99% desire and 1% talent, there's a good chance, a better chance you're gonna make it. And if you got a lot of talent and you apply it with a whole lot of ambition and desire, there's a possibility you might get through the gate. I mean, there's never been a lack of talent in this world, but there's always been a lack of acknowledgement. And there's no rule in just how to get acknowledged. And, you got to believe. That's why they call it like starving artists and stuff like that, because they don't compromise. I mean, they live by the rules of what they really, really love doing, and they can't do anything else. I mean, and then hopefully, like I've been very fortunate, I'm making a living on what I love doing. I wish excellency in this world was more than 1%, but that's about it. 1% of the world is excellent. The rest of it is mediocrity, whether it's good or not good at all. And I think there's very few people who are really, really fortunate enough to find their niche and then apply it to make a living on it. And that's the story. And, and then there's responsibilities that you not only owe to yourself, but you owe to everybody else if you're going to engage in something that takes perfection and takes a lot of dedication, and and other people got to be involved. If you're through the gate and you're making success, there's a lot of people who depend on each other, and so all of a sudden you're not by yourself. You're not just this a lone artist, and I do only what I want to do. All of a sudden you got to comply with so many other responsibilities and cares and concerns, and so there's the business side that goes along with being a dedicated musician.
Thank you for bringing that up. I had actually noted part of a quote I found, I believe, on your company website, which I'd also like to talk about, but it was about taking responsibility for what you're creating, and you touched on the legal world, and it was making me think of something I'd read just in the last week. I saw a Rolling Stone interview, a very recent one with Joe Walsh, and they asked him something about advice or things that he wished would have been different, and he just simply said, I wish someone would have told me that music is a business and not an art form, because of the things he did, like signing off on things that have taken him a long time to try and recover. When you look back on your career, do you feel like you had some of that as well? Maybe you wish you'd have known a little more in the beginning than you did later? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, but it's a mixed bag. Because check this out. If I knew what I know today, back when I was more or less naive and just engaged and totally in love with the music and so excited that other people are acknowledging my music and it's going to be part of the fabric of actually being in business and getting a record deal and all that, if I knew what I knew today, no matter how much they love my music, they would have been scared to work with me. Because what comes with knowing how it works sometimes takes the incentive away, unfortunately, from others who would rather manage and make a business deal, hoping that the artist side is naive or doesn't know how it works. And that's what I end up finding out with a lot of people, how they think. And to me, that's short-term greed. Because once you catch up and you understand how it works, whoever you got to deal with, even if it's legally you agree to things that you don't necessarily care about, it's not only that I signed something that I didn't take, that I should be responsible for, but I wasn't taking responsibility because I didn't know how it worked, and so that's my bad on me. But at the same time, the management side, who might find this incentive that I don't know as much as I know now, that gives them incentive. They're going to have a nightmare later, and that's what they do, because it ends up being disappointing, disillusioned. Oh, there's a bottom line to it all. I've learned is I say you only earn what you know how to claim. So finally, when I realized what I have a right to claim, it becomes an argument. And real business should never be about lawsuit. Real business should be about the integrity of everybody respecting each other. So I learned today, if I make a deal with somebody, well, I'm a publisher. I publish and administrate. And somebody I want to represent, and they're all excited about it. I want to make sure not only they get their own attorney, I want to make sure that before they sign, that we go to every point in the agreement and they understand all the aspects of it. Because I don't want to just look at it, what's good for me. I want to make sure that they know exactly what they're agreeing to and it's good for them. So we don't have headaches down the road. And that's the difference between long-term greed and short-term greed.
Sure, playing a long game for a good relationship. That's great.
Yep.
Well, on the note of business, can you talk a little about the idea for Lee Oskar Harmonica, the company, and where were you in your business mindset at this point when you started thinking about doing that?
I started to get involved with one manufacturer, and I found a factory in Japan called Ensemble, who, by the way, this year is the 100th anniversary, and it's my 35th anniversary since I've released my first products that I manufacture at their factory. It didn't start with, oh, I'm going to make money and rich. And matter of fact, that would be very unrealistic. It started with the fact that harmonica is the tool that I really, really depend on. And when I finally got with Eric Burdon and War, when that started happening, and the little bit of money I was making, I would put back into buying every harmonica I could get, I realized how poor the quality was. Maybe 1 out of every 10 was playable, and the other 9 I would have to, doodle with and do whatever to make it right. I was so frustrated, and there was that would be such a need for me to have a tool that I could live up to my demands and how I played and what I wanted to do. And that inspired me more. So all the knowledge through the years of tinkling with harmonicas, and then all of a sudden it came to a head where I really, really, really desperately needed to have something much better to rely on, inspired me to seek out with my ideas and design a place that could work with me. And fortunately, I found this factory company, Ensemble in Japan, and their family, the Mano family, have survived, as I said, 100 years now from the great-grandfather, and very proud of how they have continued when there was many companies made harmonicas and maybe they don't make enough money and they say, let's make furniture now, let's not make harmonicas. But they were very proud and have the right to be proud. They make amazing quality, very consistent. And so here I am 35 years later with my ideas and designs and expertise, and the potential is huge. We're growing in the market, and I'm proud to say that it's the same product I've been manufacturing with Tumble for 35 years. That's better than saying I've been in the business 35 years and I'm still trying to figure out what sticks to the wall. So pretty much it's been an amazing run from the get-go because of their expertise. And, there's no impulse in manufacturing. So you can't just decide on something and you pay all the monies for the molds and then last minute, oh, wait a minute, let's do this now. You can't do that. There's no room for impulse. So it's a whole different animal when you take ideas and you got to apply it to a manufacturing. And for that, I'm very thankful of Tombo collaborating with me and what we've done together.
Was that the first manufacturer that you identified as one that you could work with, or did you have to go through a couple?
As the first one, I tried to knock on other doors when I would find out that there was facilities or potential to set up machines and do the things I want, but I had that was not even close to having any those possibilities. There was a big quest, and fortunately, they were big fans of my music, the Mano family, and I had some huge hits in Japan with my solo stuff. One was my music was used in Shiseido, which is women cosmetics, commercial, big campaign in Japan. So I was fortunate that they were aware of my music, and that certainly helped me get through the gate. But once we started communicating and they realized, no, you don't just use my name and and have something to run with as a trophy or something. No, I have these ideas. And so we would communicate and negotiate, and I would fly back and forth while I was doing commercials for Japanese television, composing music. I would have a chance each time to have dialogue, and that was in the mid and late 70s. And then finally by 1983, our first products were being launched. They're coming through Jumbo.
So the idea was underway in the late 70s and came to fruition in 83? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. What a great story.
Nothing happens overnight, especially if you're going to do it right. Every little detail's got to be methodically, at least in consideration, and have an understanding. There's no room for impulse.
I've heard from more than one person that I follow in the business world that one of the best ways to create a business is to scratch one's own itch. In other words, and it sounds like that's exactly what you did, because you were struggling to find a product that was of high enough quality. So it looks like you're living proof that works.
Well, there's a saying, VIP, and usually those three letters are used for very important people, but I use those VIP as vision, innovate, and persistence. And not to get all philosophical here, but if you're really going to do something that's going to be, you can be persistent and continue on, you got to start with your own heart, with your own vision. And because if you try to start from innovating something that is not truly from your own heart, and it doesn't matter if it's business or music or what, it's not going to be believable. It's not going to have the integrity. It's not going to have the passion. And anytime there's going to be a little headache, you can't even muster to have the energy to be persistent. So if you want to take a chance or anything, then do the things that don't even feel like you're taking a chance, that in your heart you really believe, regardless of what you're rolling dice, regardless, there's no guarantees, but start with your own heart. And if you haven't found that means you haven't found the niche to really bet on, and that's what you got to find. But once you find something you believe in, and there's no guarantees, what better choice do you have, though?
Excellent recommendation. So switching gears, I was reading up a little bit on the Play for Change band.
Yeah.
And that's still going on, right?
Well, Play for Change is an amazing institution. Mark Johnson as the founder. And, they do, I don't know if you or the audience knows, but I'll just give it quick. I mean, the first one that Mark Johnson did as Playing for Change was the guy on the street corner in Venice, I believe it was. But anyways, he was singing Stand By Me in the street. And then he recorded that, and then he would take it to other places, street corners, wherever, any different places in the world. It could be Brazil, Mali, Jamaica, whatever, and playing back what they're wearing headphones, and the next musician wearing headphones and playing it back, and then recording along with that. And so he would have all these people from all over the world on the same tune recorded, and then do the edits, and they have the visuals, because they record also visually everything they document. And it's an amazing, wonderful project. It's stuff, personally, I dreamed about from way back, and I haven't even made a dent compared to what he has, because it's like embracing music from all over the world, because it's all just music to me. And he's proved that and done that, and it's just unbelievable. It takes a lot of ambition, and a lot of money, and a lot of time. And the model is that if the world is going to be saved, it's not going to be by politicians. It certainly can be by music. So it's an amazing platform. And sometimes they come together, all these people that he has aggregated from all over the world on different projects, and they all come on this stage together. They'll fly in together and do these amazing concerts as Playing for Change band. I've had a little bit of contact with some of those people, like when they came to Seattle, I sat in as a guest. In the near future, I will be on some concerts where they're going to have people from all over the world. I'm looking forward to the one that's going to be with the musicians from Mali and many parts of the world that I just love the music. And so, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. Lee Oskar Harmonicas is partnering up with them, because we make not just major ditonics, but we make, in all keys, but we make melody makers, which is another tuning, natural minors, harmonic minors. And these different harmonicas that we make, they're all 10 holes, but different tunings, will serve well for different genres of music. So it's a perfect fit. We sent many D natural minors to Mali, because they're building schools with the kids in each of these different countries, whether it's Hawaii and Mali, wherever, and Playing for Change is helping building these schools. So we are sending harmonicas to these various kids in different parts of the world, like South Africa. It'd be the melody maker, because it goes from a major 7 to a minor 2nd chord. The natural minors, because they do minor pentatonic in Mali. That's where the blues actually came from. So I'm really excited that it's such a perfect fit to promote the Lee Oskar Harmonica system, as I want to see people use harmonicas in all genres of music. Yeah.
That is cooler than I realized, and I'm going to have to check out some of the... I see there's some video of the Stand By Me, probably that initial performance, and I got to dive deeper and learn more about it. On the education in the Lee Oskar system, I was also perusing the education section of your website and saw a really cool download for some, I guess, introductory basic harmonica instruction. But is that part of the business or the website? Are you guys pretty active in that area? Are you feeling good about what's happening on the education side from the company's standpoint?
My whole philosophy in being in business is that the focus is not sales. The focus is on marketing. And if you market properly, then there's a better chance that it connects and the sales will happen too. The bottom line is very few people, I don't know anybody in my life that has bought a product. They buy the story and then they use the product. And if the product lives up to the story, then they're happy. But the real marketing is there for selling the right story. So when they buy the product, they got the right message. So educational stuff, no matter what level, even educational stuff that has very little academic in it, if you have to approach some people where they don't feel intimidated, but it's still inspiring, whatever way to educate, the bottom line is to inspire people to be excited about the product, and that again is selling the story. And then once they connect the story to the product, I mean, that makes me happy. And, sales therefore comes naturally if you inspire people and tell them the right stories.
That's very cool. So it sounds like, understandably so, you're really passionate about that part of what you do, the education, because it is part of the story. I love it.
Yep.
I also wanted to ask if we could talk a little bit about Ronnie Scott's in London, which goes a little ways back.
Sure.
Can you just share a little bit about that time? I don't know a lot about it personally, but I know of Ronnie Scott. I actually got to see him with a couple of the Rolling Stones and a bunch of his other British companions years ago. But yeah, I would love to just sort of hear your recanting, I guess, of that when you played there and what was happening at the time.
Well, I mean, you say you met Ronnie Scott. I've never even met the person.
No, didn't meet him. I got to see him on a stage from afar.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't had that chance either. What I can tell you is that back in the days, before we even played there, Ronnie Scott's was like one of the most well-known hardcore jazz clubs in Europe or in the world, period. And they were very hardcore, where they would Zoot Sims, Coltrane, Miles Davis, anybody that was like allowed to play there, whether they have a bigger name or a lesser name. I mean, they had to really fit a profile of what they consider real jazz or hardcore jazz. And so rock and roll or whatever was not even, couldn't even come to the front door, wouldn't even knock on the door to ask to play. I mean, it was very, very elite that way.
Yeah, and so, you know what? Forgive me, because my ignorance here, I was confusing Ronnie Scott, as in Ronnie Scott's The Jazz Club, with Ronnie Scott, the songwriter, the British kind of...
Oh.
I think I'm confusing him, but I still want to hear, I want to hear the story. I just wanted to correct myself. I think I'm not even on the same page, but please continue with the story. So
Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club was that, had that profile. Well, Eric Burdon and War, back in those days, by the way, they didn't know how to categorize. And now they have a word they can call it world beat music or whatever, But back then it was like, it was Latin, jazz, blues. You can throw 20 funk, street music, you can throw 20 different categories in there, and it still wouldn't captivate what Eric Burdon and War did. We were a jam band. And by the way, it's an interesting thing as I'm talking about it to bring up is that, I don't believe in categories per se, because categories are for two reasons, either for marketing or for librarians where they file it. But other than that, it's all music. But back in the day when they had all these categories, I mean, we would have a tune, like say Cisco Kid later on. This is after Ronnie Scott, of course. But say we would have a tune like Cisco Kid, Our World is a Ghetto. And we would have that on 3 different formats. The jazz station would play it, the pop station would play it, and the R&B station would play it. And I know that somebody will say, I hate jazz, I hate R&B, I love pop. You should hear this new tune called World is a Ghetto. And then someone says, I don't like pop at all. I like R&B, and I don't like jazz either. You should hear World is a Ghetto. Or I love jazz. I can't stand that other stuff. And then you hear, well, so everybody has these categories. And when I used to walk into like a Tower Records or anything, they were actually binders. It's like you don't judge book by the cover. That's because people do. They would look at a category and say, oh, I love jazz if they go in there. Or I love pop, I go in there. Well, the only place they would file the War records would be in the R&B department, So that was dumb. Instead of saying out of every 10 albums, put 1 in jazz and put 6 in pop and put 4 in R&B or 3 in R&B and 7 in pop. Whatever. They weren't smart. The industry is dumb to me. They weren't very good in marketing. So the same thing, these categories. So here we are allowed to play Ronnie Scott's. For whatever reason, we were considered also jazz. And Melody Maker, the newspaper, had front page, the best live band ever heard. Ronnie Scott's their club was amazed about it. They had more people coming to see the show that we played, but I think it was like 2 or 3 or 4 nights, 2 shows a night. And because of Eric Burdon, he was like Mick Jagger, very well known from the Animals. So we had a huge traffic, and Ronnie Scott's, they loved it. The bottom line is, if we didn't draw any tickets or anything, they would have said, oh, that damn rock band, why would they have that here? But people, when the registers, going in cash, everybody says it's amazing, And my point to all this is that Jimi Hendrix, who was staying with his girlfriend Monique in London and was very good friends with Eric, and I had met Jimi Hendrix a year or so before through Eric Burdon, came to the club. And then the next day he came back and he was going to sit in, and he played, and we have a recording of it, and then that was the last time. The next day he passed away. So there was a big deal about the icons, and so it was a very... Man, I can't even explain that. It was, for me as a kid and being part of this sensationalism, and I was like a fly on the wall. I can tell so many stories, and yet I weren't in the center where I had the pressure like Eric Burdon or anybody else. But I saw and heard and watched a lot of things. And Ronnie Scott was a very interesting time.
It sounded like it, and you know what? I finally can tell you why I was confused, and maybe it's laughable, and I think I should leave it in our episode too, because I'm learning a lot of different things from talking to people. But I was thinking of Ronnie Lane, who was with the Small Faces at one time, who's a pop guy, not a jazz guy, which is the guy that I saw at an Arms charity concert with those Rolling Stones I mentioned. And I guess the confusion for me came because I have heard and probably even read of Ronnie Lane's and Ronnie Scott's, jazz club, but somehow made an off connection in my mind. But yeah, it sounded like there were some wonderful stories there, and that is great. Thank you for sharing it.
Sure.
It must have been quite a crazy time, and nice that you got to, in a way, watch it the way you did, as you said, like a fly on the wall. And
let me just throw one thing in there that's I think gives you an image of things. Hendrix was an amazing, and that's why his name is as big as it. He was an amazing player. He was not in the greatest frame of mind that particular night he came and sat with us. And Liberty Records, who was the record company in Europe, who was just signing the deal with War, Eric Burdon and War, with Eric Burdon and War. So those people that come from Liberty Records are there in Ronnie Scott's. And there's this rivalry, which sickens me because it's about turf and way more than it's about the music. And Howard Scott, guitar player in a band in War, and now it's the Lowrider band, by the way. Howard Scott kicked ass, and he played an amazing solo on Mother Earth, the blues tune. And Hendrix, also played. They were both playing on the tune. And they were really, really almost like they were booing, or they were like, there was this rivalry, like, because we're going to be with Liberty Records, so they were like really accommodating Howard Scott, when he was playing. They were very cold. It was kind of mean even. I mean, like to Jimi Hendrix, because the expectations on him, and Hendrix is not part of their camp because this is Liberty Records. And I find a lot of that stuff in the music business, or maybe just human nature in any business, the turf, And then somebody you think that could be a huge fan of your music and works in a record company, and next day they're working in a different record company and they don't even want to be bothered with you,
Gosh.
You know what I mean? Or they'll go backstage and eat up all the food and drinks, and they don't even pay attention to the show you're playing. They just hang out to be seen and eat your food. And I mean, in other words, there's a side effect, if you will, of human nature that hangs out for everything but the music, okay?
Yeah.
And that's a reality, and that shouldn't piss anybody off. That should just know, in reality, believe in yourself and know that sometimes you're not going to get props from others because they don't even have the sensitivity or pay attention to music. They're just so damn busy tap dancing and making themselves feel important to try to keep a job, that's all, which they don't even necessarily do a good job at. But so there's a lot of sides to it. Everything is not just about the music, so don't assume everybody's going to put you on a silver plate and worship your music and everything else is less. No, that's unrealistic.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes along with an expression that goes something like, don't mistake someone appearing to not give a heck about what you're doing or your talent with they're just busy in their own thing.
Yeah, and
if
I may say also to the audience, know that hype is another way of saying they're selling stories, which I believe. So hype is a very important tool. But when the artists start buying their own hype, they're in trouble. I mean, it's one thing to use hype to promote yourself, but don't buy it yourself.
Good advice. Excellent advice. So I don't know if you are aware, if you've ever been around it, but my wife Sammy and I, before we came here to Panama, we were in the Silicon Valley area of Northern California, and specifically in San Jose, and there's a pretty nice little blues scene around there. And I suspect that a lot of people I know will be excited for me that you and I got to talk. But I don't know, I just wanted to bring it up because they're all big fans of yours, and I'm sure you got them all over the place. But yeah, I know they're going to be terribly excited that we got to speak today. And there's a nice little scene there happening.
Good. So you are living in Panama.
I am. We just, I think it was last week, we've been here a year. Long term, I think we're still trying to decide what we're going to do. But we're enjoying it so far. We're actually in a rural community, not too far from Coronado, if you remember where that is when you come through to Boquete.
Yes.
But maybe we're farther away from Boquete, where the Jazz and Blues Festival is, than from Panama. But
right.
Anyway, we've covered a lot of ground, I think. I'm looking over some things. What are some of the things I like to ask you? Just gracefully covered pretty much about everything I like to touch on with my guests. But so I suppose we're at a good place where we could wrap up and let you get about your day. Go ahead.
I wanted to say one thing.
Yeah.
I have a new saying that I'm branding with, so just know I'm claiming it as my copyright, but it's a positioning phrase that I am going to be tagging on whenever I play as Lee Oskar and Friends, and it's called A Benefit Without Crisis. And what that means is, if someone is asking me, it would be like me saying, if you don't come and visit me while I'm alive, don't even bother coming to my funeral. If you're a fan of my music, or if you're a fan of any individuals who are on a gig with me as musicians, every one of them has fans. If any of those fans don't come and support live music, support those musicians, including myself, while we are at our best and playing, don't even bother coming to a benefit. I mean, when it's crisis. I mean, what's the point? If you support the arts and you support the music while we are doing it at the best, and you show that appreciation, and even more, show that you really, really are a fan, and what we do, you can embrace, and it touches your heart too, while we can express. Support that. And if you support that, then people, as anybody as an artist, can also make a living And if you make a living, you can afford your own health insurance. You don't therefore need no freaking benefit when it's a crisis, when I can't even be there to play because I need a liver or a heart or something, and you're not even hearing the people at the best that you claim you were a fan of. So I call it a benefit without crisis is every time I play a gig.
I love that. Thank you for saying that too, because I always, having been just a weekend warrior sort of gigging musician who didn't play any farther than a place I could drive to in about a half hour, I always felt and still kind of feel that live music on local levels it always feels like it's on the verge of being a little trouble because of perhaps not enough appreciation. But I think that brings what you are branding there, brings into focus something really important. I know one thing I did want to ask you about, and I almost forgot, was now two things, but the Lowrider Band and Lee Oskar and Friends. So the Lowrider Band is still doing their thing? And
yeah, Lowrider Band, just so the audience knows, we can't use the name War. We can't say formally of War. We have a restraining order, as crazy as it sounds, and it's even appalling to the legal community that it was ruled that way. But never mind, that's how it's ruled, that me and my colleagues, who originally composed and recorded and were known under that name, War, are not allowed to perform, even say formally of War. There's no way, you can't even spell it, you can't even say Raw, because they get up in the mirror and say War. We have actually literally rulings on us of restraining order that we cannot promote ourselves, who we were and who we are, in anything that's exploiting and selling tickets for concerts. So
it's crazy.
So, yeah. But again, never mind, that's what it is. So just so you know, me and my colleagues, and that's Howard Scott on guitar, Hale Brown on drums, and unfortunately, B.B. Dickinson on the bass is not in good condition, and he's had some strokes, so he's in the hospital. But the four of us, and now the three of us, out of the five that's alive, continue playing the music and jamming the music that we were known for as the Lowrider Band. So we named it after one of the tunes that we wrote. And we continue playing the music. Every time it's a jam, every time it's really fresh and in the moment. The band out there that's using our name, or the name that we used to be called, that's a trademark owned by the ex-manager. And the ex-manager has this band out there to, basically pretend it was us, because they don't market it as a tribute band. And now that we have really, give them some difficulties by challenging certain things, but obviously not spinning our wheels too much, we don't have a restraining order on the ex-manager and how he uses it. But he has now changed the story where it's called The Evolution of War.
Ah, I've seen this.
And it's pathetic. And the people who are playing and draw a lot of people, because people assume if it says war, it must be them. They do this sissy kind of little doo-wop kind of dance, and it's a monologue. And Lonnie Jordan, who is the keyboard player originally from War, is the only original member in there. And he's a yo-yo for the ex-manager because he has no ownership of that. But you needed to exercise the right to use the trademark to put another band out there. There's some rulings that really is a little obsolete for our situation, but it still applies that you have to have one original member. And so Lonnie Jordan became the yo-yo for the ex-manager. And it's sad because people will come to the show and see this, and some people complain because Lonnie stands up there and talks too much, and they're disappointed and they walk out. And others are totally naive, and maybe younger people, and they think because they're playing Lowrider and all, think this is the real deal. And then one kid, when he came back and told his Uncle Fred introduced him to the War music, and every weekend they played it. He said, Uncle Fred, that wasn't the original guys in that. Uncle Fred got very upset because Uncle Fred he was embarrassed because he thought that was the real guys, playing. But so there's all that. But just the bottom line is that Lowrider Band is a band that has Howard Scott, Hale Brown, myself in it, and we continue to jam and play the music like it always meant to be. Every time it's different, it's always in the moment, and that's the difference.
That's very cool. Well, I'm glad that you're still able to do it, and hopefully that other stuff will get resolved at some point. And then
Lee Oskar and Friends is whenever because I call the Lowrider Band, by the way, since we don't do a lot of gigs, I call that a rare commodity. And that's the positioning phrase for a lowrider band. We play as a rare commodity. Lee Oskar and Friends, therefore, because I'm producing a lot of things these days, and I got amazing tunes that a guy named David Rotundo I'm producing. There's a song called Look at the World. I can't wait to release it. And then with that said, I'm playing locally around. Well, actually, we were in South Korea last week. I did a big concert because, fortunately, my Lee Oskar name is well received in Japan and South Korea, other places. So I was invited to a concert, so I brought Lee Oskar and Friends there. And they're some of the best musicians in the Northwest. And we play different gigs, small and big, doesn't matter what, in the Northwest. And looking to do more stuff like that. And some of those people I also use when I produce. A lot of stuff here that I'm producing for, an artist. And so I have no complaints. Nobody's to feel sorry for me and my colleagues, no matter whatever we went through. And we're all productive and we're all kicking ass and doing what we love doing, and that's the music.
Well, I love your attitude, and I love that you're still working so hard, not only with your harmonica manufacturing company, but musically, and still enjoying it so much. You're a real inspiration.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. So I know people can find out a lot of things about you at Lee Oskar with a K, Oscar.com. Are there other places online that people can find you, or is that the best place?
If you go to leeoscar.com, that pretty much can take you to other websites that we have. I mean, we have websites for the Quick Guide, which shows harmonica with guitar in different genres of music. But you can come to leeoscar.com for that. You also have Lee Oskar paintings. I paint. I mean, so I think it's fair to say that through leeoscar.com, you can pretty much reach out to different things that I or we do. You got YouTube. There's stuff on YouTube that I prefer not even for people to see. If I pick my nose and somebody took a picture of it, put it on YouTube. And then I discover it later, and I want to strike it down. Who knows? I mean, there's so much technology and social media today that it's almost impossible for it to be not found. I mean, so if you're interested in anything that I do or my company does, you can just Google Lee Oskar or leeoscar.com, and I'm sure that you can communicate anything you need to us.
Yep, and actually, probably to your chagrin, I see that your company and your people have you all over social media, so I'll be sure that people can take a look at that when they look at our conversation online. Lee, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation, and maybe I'll get to see you at the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival in February. That would be fun. So.
Yes, I look forward to being there. Thank you. Thanks for the conversation.
You got it, man. Hey, this is Robonzo. Thanks so much for listening. Did you know I'm also an author? Check out my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon. And the book is also available in audio format as the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. Check it out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Last but not least, are you a gigging musician, recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional? Perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world? Struggling to get the gigs you want? Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for my email list. I'll send you an occasional email with tips, expert advice, music, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your journey better and brighter. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.